Hello there, everyone. I hope you are all doing good at this time. I just want to say advance Merry Christmas to everyone, and 2022 is approaching, and I wish 2022 will bring a new great and positive scene to each and every one of us. I also wish that everything will become considerably normal. Okay. Together with Mr. Arbozo, Mr. Gatok, and Mr. Villacorta, we will introduce to you to another literary theory or literary approach which has been prominently used for many decades as a lens for literary criticism, which is feminism. This is defined as the advocacy of women's rights on the basis of the equality of the sexes. This is quite interesting since all the presenters of this topic are male in nature, and I think this would be a gratifying opportunity for us to appreciate more the feminist approach and how we will look upon this to promote women's rights and to recognize more women's full potential in our society. So now to start with, let me share these two inspiring quotes from G.D. Anderson or Gina Dune Anderson and Ruth Bader Ginsburg, in which the underlying message and ideas of these quotes are definitely for feminism. Okay, according to G.D. Anderson, quote unquote, feminism isn't about making women stronger. Women are already strong. It's about changing the way the world perceives that strength. So, from Ruth Bader Ginsburg, women belong in all places where decisions are being made. It shouldn't be that women are the exception. So, as we can see in the quote of G.D. Anderson, this is about empowering every woman. This is about progression and acceptance of their strength, and this is truly an uplifting quote to live to live by. For Ruth Bader Ginsburg quote, it is an agreeable and acceptable notion that women should not be an exception. Women walk to earth to have their own responsibilities, rights, and duties that would satisfy them without being interfered by the patriarchal culture. Our duty now is to ensure that women's participation in building the community is not an exception but becomes the commonplace or norm. Okay, so that's the end of my sharing. Now, let's move on to the next slide. Now, what is feminist literary criticism? Now, when we heard about feminist literary criticism, what comes into your mind? So that might be a response to literature about women, or that might be a backlash to patriarchal society, or it is all about the focus of women in literature, isn't it? Okay, that that might sound right because by its definition, feminist literary criticism is the rebellion of the female consciousness against the male images of female identity and experience. The concept of female identity shows us how female experience is transformed into female consciousness, often in reaction to male paradigms for female experience. So, when we say consciousness, this is something like the voice of the women, thus their scream for equality through literature. This is something conveying a positive ideological point of view on how the male character put an outlook to female identity that is something they encountered, undergone, or lived through. Now, the feminist literary criticism also shows how, uh, um, as, at, as what I have said, what they have encountered, undergone, and lived through become now the consciousness or the gateway that gave rise to this kind of approach and that would empower women around the globe. So after my discussion, my fellow reporters will discuss more about feminist literary criticism. For now, let us have a look at the historical origin of feminist movement where this has been the driving force of the feminist approach to literature. And we will be going to explore more how feminism is bound through different decades and centuries. Now, historical origins of the movement. Modern feminist literary criticism had its roots in the post World War II feminist movement that spilled over into the intellectual circles of America's colleges and universities. The true origins of the movement can be traced as far back as the late 18th century with Mary Wollstonecraft, a vindication of the rights of women in the year 1972. I nine, sorry, 1792. Other writers such as John Stuart Mill, Margaret Fuller, and Simone de Beauvoir followed suit from the mid-19th century to the mid-20th century. From the 1960s onward, feminist literary critics proliferated. So after the World War II, the feminist movement became more prominent in the mental activity of the university and colleges in America. This time was probably the feminist people popped out because of the effect of the war, especially the effect on the women. So I have seen a lot of documentaries during the World War II, and I could not imagine how women, children, and elders suffered during that time. And there were many rape cases, abuses, and killings amongst women, and it was very awful to think. And and also in the Philippines, there were many rape cases during the Second World War committed by the Japanese Imperial Army, the allied of Nazi government. When we think of it, it was extremely a pity experience, and that was probably one of the reasons for the feminist movement and awakens the consciousness of feminism. Let us now take a look at the feminist criticism during the Renaissance period. This period also many famous writers and authors were present like Dante Alighieri, Geoffrey Chaucer, Edmonds, Edmund Spencer, what else? Michelangelo, and the most ever famous William, William Shakespeare. So the Renaissance period was taking place from the 14th century to the 17th century. So the feminist criticism in the Renaissance and 17th century. So approximately 1550 to 1700 was an immensely exciting time in terms of the history of women and literature in England. Female writers were beginning to publish their work both through manuscript circulation and in printed books in an enormous variety of genres, including poems, plays, conversion, narratives, advice, books, translations, letters, devotional texts, prophecies, pamphlets, memoirs, and works of philosophy and fiction. So during this period, women had freedom to write and publish their literary works in terms of poems, plays, just like William Shakespeare, devotion, devotional texts, fiction, and among others. Now, female writers during this period already exhibited their writing skills and showed their talent in literature. In 1617, a pamphleteer who called herself Esther Sowernom firmly reminded her female readers of their dignity. She said that you are women in creation, noble, in redemption, gracious, in use, most blessed. In the early 17th century, there was considerable controversy over the number of women who were dressing and behaving like men in in one of the anonymous written responses to this situation, the author asserts the equality of women who are as freeborn as men, have as free election and as free spirit. So, Esther Sowernom distributed a pamphlet to remind remind that female readers of their dignity. She said that you are a woman in creation, in noble and redemption, gracious in use, and most blessed. Oh, that is how Esther Sowernom displayed an influence on women by means of pamphlets. So I think this was the protest. Uh, this was this was the protest for equality of gender um, by dressing and behaving like men, and this is something for a psychological aspect that they would not wait that women should wear and act like males to recognize their rights and freedom. So it indicates here that women who are as freeborn as men have free election and as free spirits. So that was how they take the issue of inequality. So they worn a male garments. So the women wore male garments. So that's it. Now, the complex gender politics of the early modern period gave rise to continued constraint as well as new freedoms to an outburst of writing by women in their text and three fundamental aspects of feminist literary criticism concerned with women as writers, subjects, and readers of literature may all be discerned. So here, there are three aspects of feminist literary criticism: the concern with women as writer, um, women as subjects, and women as readers of literature. So which can be observed during the Renaissance period. So feminist literary um, works from this era were equally capable of celebrating women's initiative, praising good men and women, envisioning unfettered female friendship, and enjoying a comic or satiric response to the strangeness of women's position in the world. Importantly, they were also able to look forward, imagining new worlds that setting them ablaze with their imagination. Now, let us move on to the feminist criticism of Virginia Woolf. So, Virginia Woolf is rightly considered the founder of modern feminist literary criticism. Prior to her landmark contributions to the field, in particular, here her feminist manifesto of literary criticism. So, according to this also, in Woolf's era, there were numerous literary magazines with feminist focus and feminist magazines with literary focus, which one might push and spread through the rise of the feminist um, movement. So Woolf also prompts us to consider the nature of a literary canon that includes women authors and the nature of the form of literary text written and about women. In doing so, she also simultaneously revises and opens up the very nature and form of literary criticism and theory, forging a new feminist literary critical language, a new feminist agenda. So, Woolf's advocacy really changed the course of feminism, and that may be the reason that she considered the founder of the modern feminist literary criticism because of her massive contribution, especially opening up this kind of literary criticism and theory, forging a new feminist literary critical language and the new exercises of of feminism that progressed up until this time. So Wolf was politically active and anti-fascist and a member of a number of different organizations and committees, and as she makes clear in Three Guineas, anti-fascism, fascism, and feminism are for her inextricably linked. So anti-fascism is the movement in opposition to strong regimentation, which means in layman's term, this is the strong control of the government to the people, which came to prominence in Europe during the 20th century. Now, the anti-fascist is strongly related to feminist movement, since the women are involved in fascist ideology that decrease their freedom and rights. Now there were these three Guineas, the essay of Virginia Woolf that contains a campaign to support the rebuilding of the women's college and an organization to promote women's employment in the profession, and that was the legacy of um, Virginia Woolf. So we are done with Virginia Woolf. Now let us explore the post-colonial feminist criticism. So the post-colonial period is the end of the Second World War. So let us read this. So the term post-colonial, both in feminist and non-feminist usage, signifies differently according to the context in which it is used. Sometimes it is understood as temporal terms, as that which comes after the historically located phenomenon of colonialism. Often it is used as mode of critique that insists upon questioning both and mechanisms of colonial domination and their ongoing effects in the present. So after the war, maybe the context of their writings was more on how the war impacted the lives of the women and the effect of the war to the women and how the people treat the women during the war. As what has indicated, that is it is used as a mode of questioning both mechanism of colonial domination and their ongoing effects in the present. So from the feminist perspective, so what is particularly interesting, however, is the degree to which patriarchal powers structures cut across the colonizer and colonized divide and do not allow women the potentially subversive position and modes of operation open to men. So this is what the point of view of the feminist movement, the culture of patriarchal power and domination spread out during the colonial period, and they did not allow women to do the task of uh, do the task open to men. So the key areas of the course of the post-colonial literary studies have indeed in, have indeed included the ways in which power works through language and literary culture, shape values, meanings, um, subjectivities, and identities of female characters. So that concludes my discussion, and I hope you have gained meaningful insights about this one. And now let us explore more about feminism, as my fellow reporters will discuss more about feminism and feminist literary criticism. Thank you.